Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. Good evening. I am Romi Hill, and I'm the designer behind Designs by Romi. And this is my almost weekly YouTube live where I talk about patterns and my patterns, techniques, and answer your questions. So, welcome, everybody. It's nice to see you here. So I'm having a little bit of a delay today, I think, a little bit more of a delay in seeing your chats. But I do say, hi, Marianne. It's nice to see you. Um, so if there's a little bit extra of a delay, then that's why. Anyway, so today I am going to go over in detail it's a slippery slope mitts. And before that, though, I'm going to answer a question about my Fiori di Sole pattern. And that is a shawl. It's one of my earlier designs. I can't believe I was just looking at it at the pattern copyright 2010. So it's one of my earlier shawl patterns, and I'm actually reworking it a little bit to make it clearer. So I'm going to show you how to start it, and it starts with a garter tab. So I'm going to show you how to start that and kind of give you a little trick that will make it a little bit easier to start. So before that, um, just I want to say hi to everybody, Deborah, Sue, Judy, Diana. It's so nice to see you. Oh, and next week I will be in the San Francisco Bay Area, so I won't be having a live. So just to let you know, next week, no live. So let's see, just a little bit of housekeeping here first. So if you are in the San Francisco Bay Area, um, A Verb for Keeping Warm has added four more one-on-one appointments with me, and that's on Saturday. So if you are going to be around, like in that area on Saturday, I know that the yarn crawl is like it's a really large area. So these appointments, the ones on Friday, went really fast. So they added four more, and these are like 15-minute things where you can ask me anything, like basically help you choose the perfect pattern or the perfect yarns. You can ask me like how to do something, any type of technique, help with fixing mistakes, whatever. So I think I already have the link in the notes, but if I don't, I will add it there. So, but it's part of A Verb for Keeping Warm's yarn crawl festivities. And hi, Nancy and Mary and Vegan Time and Claire. So lovely to see you. Okay, and then also I wanted to remind you that I am participating in Knit for Food. So even if you can like support Knit for Food for $2 or three or four, $5, like it all adds up into a lot of food for people. So I know everybody is stretched right now, and I actually donate monthly to a food bank in the area. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I have to cut back on things that I'm doing. And then I realized, okay, well, if I'm really hurting for food, those people who are going to the food bank are hurting even more for food. So we cut back a little bit more on our food, and we're like dedicated to this. So hopefully, you can support me. Knit for Food is the brainchild of Laura Nelkin, and it's a knitathon, like a 12-hour knitathon on March 23rd. So we'll all be just knitting, 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 knitting all day for 12 hours. So basically, like, sounds like deadline knitting to me. But yeah, so that would be great. And let's see. Oh, Kelly, you're vegan time. Okay. I was wondering if that was you. And I was like, I didn't want to call you the wrong, I didn't want to call you the wrong name. It's nice to see you, Kelly. Um, okay, so let's get started. I'm going to do the Fiori di Sole start. And this was a question from somebody who is knitting this as a wedding shawl. And I'm just going to show you what this looks like. So first of all, um, I was going to bring some scrap paper, but of course I forgot my scrap paper. But hang on just a minute. I'm just going to show you this on the back of a sheet of paper here. So Fiori di Sole is a triangular shawl. So here's the triangle like this. Let me get this a little bit closer. Okay, so the trick in a triangular shawl is to make the top part where you're starting be completely straight across. So this starts with a garter tab, and a garter tab is just a little rectangle, and from that rectangle, the rest of the shawl will grow. So here are the two halves of it, the basic halves. So they grow out like this, and there are increases along the edge here and along the spine right here. So this particular shawl has sort of a doily type of thing up top, but the idea is basically the same. So when you start, you're casting on right across one edge of the rectangle and then working the rectangle, and then you pick up stitches all the way around it, so then you can knit out from there. So that is what is going on with that. Okay, so one thing I did notice when I grabbed this is um, I used pick up stitches here. This was before I really realized that technically picking up stitches does not mean picking up and knitting stitches. So for those of you who realized that, thank you for not saying anything. That was very kind. So this should really be pick up and knit. And that is part of my, I'm going back through my patterns and like fixing things that I think should be fixed, and clarifying other things. So that's going to be part of it. So this is pick up and knit. So this first part of the pattern here, this little area right here, this is the garter tab. So I tell you to use waste yarn, but you don't necessarily have to use waste yarn. You can actually just use a backwards loop cast on. And that's what I'm going to show you here is just a backwards loop cast on, because it's just less fussy. I'll probably rewrite this pattern to include the backwards loop instead, just because it's less fussy. So it just starts, it's a very, very basic cast on. It's also called the E cast on. So you're just doing loops here. So you want the stitches to be mounted on your needle with the right leg in front and the left leg in back. So I'm just going to cast on these 5 stitches here. So because I did that, I don't need to knit this first row with working yarn because this is basically the first row of my working yarn is already on my needle here. So now, and I know a lot of you have seen this before, I'm going to do a little bit of an assist here. This is going to help me stick my stitches back on my needle later. I'm just going to put a pin through these 5 stitches here. And when it comes time, I'm going to use the pin to pull the stitches up and so they can be on my needle. Hi, Terry. Nice to see you. Okay, so now that I have cast these on, I am ready to do rows 1 through 8. So for rows 1, 3, 5, and 7, I'm going to SSK, knit 1, yarn over, knit 2 together. And then on 2, 4, 6, and 8, it's just going to be a knit row. Okay, so I'm going to do an SSK. You could also do a knit 2 together through the back loop. So an SSK is a slip, slip, knit. Okay, and then knit 1, yarn over, and then knit 2. So that's my first row. And I'm just going to do this fairly quickly, hoping that I don't lose count. But if I do, I will show you how to go back later and figure out whether or not you have the correct number of rows. So here is row 3. So I'm just going back and forth. This looks like a very tiny little start for the shawl. I know it doesn't really make all that much sense yet, but it will. Here's row 5. So this little edge on here makes it easier for the shawl to keep its shape along the edge. And that is what I'm going for. So shawls can have a tendency to curl a little bit. So now if you've lost count, you can tell where you are by looking at the number of garter ridges here. So I have 3 garter ridges. So that means I have done through row 6. So now I'm going to do row 7. Okay. And after this, we're going to pick up stitches all the way around. So this is a little bit of a modified garter tab because it has the yarn over in there. Okay, so this is rows 1 through 8. And you can see it's got that little yarn over in the middle here. It's a little decorative, not hugely decorative, but a little bit. So let's start with row 9. So row 9 is where I'm going to work across these 5 stitches up top here, turn it to the side, pick up stitches along this edge of the rectangle, and then I'm going to stick these stitches at the end here onto my needle, and I am going to work the rest of this little area here. So I'm just going to start out with my slip slip knit, and then my knit 1, yarn over, and then knit 2. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to be picking up stitches and picking up and knitting stitches all the way around the edge. So into each one of these little bumps on the edge here, I'm going to pick up and knit a stitch. And in between those, I am going to add yarn overs. So it's going to be a yarn over. And then I like to get just the very edge here and pick up a stitch a stitch in that little edge, and you can use the other end of your needle for an assist if you like. That is not cheating. I do that all the time. Okay, so I'm going to go all the way around. This is very splitty yarn. So what I'm doing, I am gonna use my other needle here just to pick that bump up so I can help myself get that together. And yarn over, and going to knit, yarn over, then let me just pick up that little bump in the edge again, and I'm going to knit that, and then a yarn over, And then I'm going to pick up and knit. My last stitch that I'm picking up and knitting is then that last garter stitch ridge right here. So right at the edge. So now I'm going to place these stitches onto my needle. So they're oriented a little funky. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to slip these onto my working needle for now so I can slip them back to my left needle. So I want 5 stitches. Just being a little careful here. If you drop them, it's not a big deal. This is just to assist you. They're not actually live stitches. So if you drop it, don't worry. Okay, so now I'm going to stick these back onto my left needle so I can work them. Okay, so I have 5 stitches there. So at this point, I am right at the end here. I'm going to add that yarn over. Oops, sorry. I'm going to add this yarn over, and then I'm going to work those stitches that I just placed on my left needle. So there's my yarn over, and now I'm going to knit 2, yarn over, knit 1, knit 2 together. So 1, 2, yarn over, knit 1, and then knit 2 together. So I'm now at the end of row 9. And I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 19 stitches. So that's the end of my right side row. So let me turn this over here and I'm going to work row 10. So the edging is garter stitch. So I am knitting 5 stitches across here for the edging, and then I'm going to purl 2. Okay, so into 3 of the yarn overs in the center, I'm going to purl 1 and knit 1 into the yarn over. So that adds a stitch into each one of those yarn overs. So at the end, I will have 3 extra stitches for 22 stitches. So I'm going to purl 1 and then move my yarn to the back and then knit 1. And then go over here. So let me show you what that would look like English style, even though I'm a terrible thrower. So I am going to purl a stitch into my yarn over, and then my yarn goes to the back, and I'm going to knit a stitch, and then bring my yarn forward again. So purl 1, and then into my yarn over, purl 1, yarn to the back, knit 1, and then yarn to the front again. So I'm almost to the end here. I just have a couple more stitches to purl, and now these last 5 stitches are knit. Okay, so this is the end of row 10. So it looks really weird, but when you put it over here like this, so I'm going to put it onto my trusty cable needle here and kind of stretch that out. And you can see you are now ready. So this is the top part, the very top part of the shawl. And that's the part that's going to go at the back of your neck. And once you have all of these stitches here, you are ready to work chart A. So that is the start. Hopefully that's helpful. Okay, so that pattern, I am going to update it soon and kind of clarify some of those things in there. I think I got to be a better pattern writer later. So I'm going to go back and kind of add the things that I realize now that are kind of unclear to people. So, okay, so let's talk about It's a Slippery Slope. So these are um, mitts here. I love them. They are so warm and cozy because they have the slip stitches, and that just gives you like extra here. So you can see it gives you extra warmth with all the slip stitches. And my son, whose 21st birthday it is tomorrow, oh my God, that's my younger son too. So I have to watch them because he said he's going to steal them. So anyway, this may be the last time I get to wear them, so I'm going to enjoy them. They're really super cozy. The fabric looks exactly like stranded fabric. So if you were to, even if you look at the underside, which I will show you as well, they look completely like stranded fabric. So if you don't like doing stranded knitting, as I know like some of you have said that you can't get the tension right, totally get that. Slip stitches are for you. So, okay, let's transition across. Okay, so let me show you what the inside here looks like. That's what it looks like on the inside. So you can see all of the floats across here. And you're just slipping one stitch, like knit one, slip one, knit one, slip one on every single row. And these are written for one master color and two contrast colors. So thank you everybody for the lovely birthday wishes. I am going to tell him happy birthday from you all. So this is how cool my kid is. He's spending his 21st birthday with us because he's just the best. So, okay, let's take a look here. I'm going to go into the pattern. So these are unisex sizing, and they're small, medium, large, and extra large. And these, I did the mediums. So I did a smaller version this time for one of my test knitters who has small hands. And then it goes up to extra large. So the gauge on this is a little odd because it will look like you have 28 rounds to 4 inches or 10 centimeters, but you've actually worked 56 rounds. So that is because what you're basically doing is taking a pattern that's stranded. So if I were to work this stranded, for instance, this row would be, I would be working with two colors and I would knit one with one color and then knit one with my next color. So because of that, you are so welcome, Naomi. I hope that helped. So because of that, you are actually like when the dust settles and everything, um, these are going to kind of get scrunched together. So so you'll understand when you start knitting them. Basically, if you look at this, so you have your slip stitch pattern 1 and slip stitch pattern 2. So these are written for 3 colors, one um, one master color, and then I wrote it for 2 contrast colors. Okay, so you can see in the repeating pattern here, basically when you work 2 rounds, it's one round, if that makes sense. It will look like one round on your mitt. So hopefully I'm making sense, but um, if I'm not making sense, let me know. Okay, So this uses one of my favorite little tricks to join in the round, and that is to cast on straight and flat, and then work one row back and forth. Nancy, I don't have a sample done in the three colors, but I am going to show you. I'm going to show you what that will look like shortly. I have a little tiny mini one, and I'm going to show you what that looks like. Okay, so this starts out with any type of cast on that you want to use. I use a backwards loop cast on. So I'm going to show you, um, starting with the cast on, how to do this. So I use a backwards loop cast on, and I like to work with two circular needles. So just checking all of the comments and everybody. It's so nice to see you. I hope, Terry, that you're feeling well, and I will definitely pass on happy birthday wishes. So I'm just going to do 20 stitches. I'm not going to cast on the whole thing here. So this is again just my, oh, it's a really loose cast on. So I use it for a lot of things if I want just a low profile, kind of low key cast on. So if you look at these, you'll see that the cast on edge curls to the inside. So you don't really see that. And that's the point of this type of cast on. So I didn't want it to look like any particular cast on, just I wanted a rolled edge here. Okay, so I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 stitches. Okay, so let's see. Okay. So here is what I would do, and actually what I did do to cast on for these mitts. So now I am going to um, work across. I turned it, and my first row is going to be a knit row. I'm going to end up putting this on two circular needles. So I am using a second circular needle, and I'm just going to knit across here. And after that, I'm going to turn over, and we are going to divide these up onto the two needles and get going. So one of the things, Kelly, one of the things could be you may be pulling a little bit too tight when you're doing the slip stitch fabric, and that could make your row gauge a little bit long, possibly. Let me just go across here. Okay. So here is the row where I'm going to divide up my stitches. I was a little bit in the ozone there for a moment, but this is the actual row. This is the right side row. So you can see I want the purl bumps on the right side so that it's going to curl around. And I've left enough of a tail here to sew the bottom together later. So I am going to divide this in half. I cast on 20 stitches, but I don't like to switch needles on a purl, and I will show you what I mean in a moment. So I'm not going to divide these exactly equally. Okay, so here is 12. And now I'm going to take the other end of this needle And I'm going to work the rest of those stitches. And I am going to get set to join in the round. Okay, so if you have ever cast on a bunch of stitches and then knit some rounds and then realized at the end that your cast on round is twisted, you will appreciate this. So this is divided onto two circular needles. So what I'm going to do now is fold it in half. So I want to have the pearls on the outside here. And you can see that there's some extra fabric over here, and that's going to help me avoid twisting it. It's particularly easy to twist something when you are joining and you're purling, just because of the way the yarn comes off of the stitch. So I'm just being careful not to twist it. So here is what it looks like so far. So I have my two circular needles. I'm actually going to switch over so you can see how this is hanging out. So I have on one side, I have one needle, and then on the other side, I have the other needle. So the stitches that are on the needle with the orange cord are going to stay on that needle always, and the stitches with the yellow cord are always going to stay on that one. So that if you somehow end up losing some stitches off of one of them, so sometimes I pick up the wrong one and like I'll pick up the wrong needle. I try not to do that, so that's why I have two different needles here. So I have these nickel ones with orange cord, and then the carbons with my yellow cord. So sometimes that works. It doesn't always work. Sometimes I still manage to mess it up. But okay. So here we go. Just going to check this again. And I'm going to start knitting over here with the carbon needle, and I've come over from the other one. So I do have to join it with a purl, but I'm just going to be super careful that I don't twist this around. So I like to give it a little bit of a yank. And I'm just going to start working all the way around. So unfortunately, I have to go. I do actually have to transition over here with a purl. Oh, look, I did. Just because I was talking about it, I managed to mess this up. So here's what you do when that happens. So you can see here how I messed this up. I did that on purpose, right? It's a teaching moment. So I'm just going to put these back on the other needle. I'm just going to slip them back. So then that will be fine. So I can just switch those back. And now I am going to go back to finishing up my round. I would love to say I did that on purpose, but I didn't. So okay. So let's just finish this up here. And I do like to pull it a little bit so to tighten up that area because it tends to get a little loose. So you can see here how this is stretching in between the needles. Don't worry about that. It's okay. Um, it will tighten up. And then when you use your tail to sew this up, you can sew that part up too. So not to worry. Okay, so now I'm going to pull this through and I'm going to start my ribbing. So this is a 2x2 ribbing, and I have a little trick that I use to make a nice, neat 2x2 ribbing. So I knit with, I'm just going to give that another little tug. I knit usually with a Western purl. So in a Western purl, your yarn comes over the top. Um, However, I find that it makes my last knit column here super messy. So when I do 2x2 ribbing, my first purl column after my last knit column is an Eastern purl. So I'm wrapping it the other way. So that means my right leg is going to be in the back and my left leg is going to be in the front. And then the next one is a Western purl. So I'm going to knit two and then Eastern purl, Western purl. I do not knit two Eastern purls because for me, I have found that it makes my knit column messy. So you may not have the same problem. Everybody is a little bit different. So definitely see what works for you. Okay, so now I'm going to purl two. Okay, so before I was talking about I don't like to switch over and do, so I moved these two pearls onto my carbon needle here because I don't like switching in between here from a knit to a purl. For me, it gets kind of messy. So I like to start my needle with a knit stitch. Definitely, I totally agree, Sue. Yeah, I totally agree. It's you need to be careful when you're going from like a magic loop or using two circs. It's really easy to add a yarn over by mistake. So let me see. Okay, okie doke. So I'm just going to pull that tight again and I'm going to show you what happens when you use the Eastern purl like this. Oh, I think I messed this up somehow. Oh, one, two. Nope, I didn't. Okay, just having counting problems. It's that kind of day. Okay, so Eastern purl, Western purl. All right, so here I am at the beginning of the round again, and the knits are going to be regular, just normally how you mount your knits. So the Eastern purl is going to be mounted with the right leg in back and the left leg in front. So that means when you come to it again, you are going to insert your needle from the back and work that purl through the back loop. So it's an Eastern purl through the back loop and then Western purl. So knit, knit. Okay, if you were an English style knitter and you decided to try this method, you would come over here to your Eastern purl, insert your needle from the back and wrap around the bottom. And then a regular Western purl. Oops, splitting my yarn here and yarn to the back. And then you can just continue. Okay, so again, yarn to the front here. If it's an Eastern purl, you're going to check to see how the legs are mounted. If it's right leg is in the back, left leg is in front, you're always going to work it through the back loop to keep it untwisted. And I'm going to work an Eastern purl again to keep that column nice and tidy. Okay, so let me see. Yes, exactly. Deborah asked why I did it 12 and 8. It was so I didn't have to start with a purl. Let me see. Okay, alrighty. So that is what it looks like for the cast on. So let me show you. So I just did some rounds. Like this is a little tiny teddy bear mitt, I guess. I just did some ribbing rounds, and you can see how nice and tidy the knit rows or the knit columns are. And here, so that is why I do that Eastern purl. When you do that, this is what you're going to get, or this is what I get on the back. Like I said, people knit slightly different, sometimes a lot different, and so you can get different results as well. So for me, there's always going to be like a little bit of extra fabric here, or like some extra yarn when I go from knit to purl. So what I basically did by doing that is instead of having the extra show up in this last knit column here, it's actually showing up on the wrong side here. So this method is not good if you're going to try to make a ribbing that needs to be folded. This is just if you're hiding the wrong side. And this is on the other side, that is the purl column right here, right after the knit column. So all of the extra yarn is in that purl column instead of in the knit column. And it turns out nice and tidy. Okay, so on this, so here's what I've done so far. I have done part of the repeating pattern. So I've gone through um, rounds 9 and 10. I'm sorry, through rounds 3 and 4, I think. Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4. I am ready for round 7 and 8, where I'm going to add in my second contrast color. And I'm just going to show you what it looks like. So using these, you're going to see over to the side here all the contrast color 1, contrast color 2, and master color. So for the mitts that I did, I just used 10 different colors, 10 different contrast colors. And so every time there's the contrast color changes, I just used a different color. And you can see the colors I used are on the very last page of the pattern. I have right here, I have all of the colors that I used. And Sue said, yeah, it is common to see that left column of knits larger. Yes, it is really common. But every time I post something about this, I've had I have people say like their first knit column is too big or something else happens, and there are so many there's a huge difference in knitting styles. So I hesitate to say this will work for everybody because I know that there's going to be somebody out there that it won't work for. So I think like the best answer is always try it, and if it doesn't work for you, um, find your own special way to make it work for you. So okay, so I am about to add contrast color 2. So these are very mild-mannered in comparison to to my wildly colorful mitts that made me They made me so happy to knit them. I was loving all the different colors. Okay. So I usually, when I add yarns, I often kind of just tie everything in a knot at the base here when I have a lot of just like a slip knot, just so I am not accidentally like making a really super short tail that I can't weave in later. Okay, so when I start with contrast color 2, I'm going to be working slip stitch pattern 2, which is this one. So I'm going to be slipping my first stitch here. So these are always slipped purlwise because I want to keep it oriented with my right leg in front and my left leg in back. And then I am going to knit one. So when I do slip stitch knitting, just like when I'm doing stranded knitting, my I pull my stitches apart so that I don't get my floats too tight. So I'm just pulling those apart here. So that's my first part. Let me see. I'm looking around. Okay. Just wanted to make sure I saw everybody chatting. I just wanted to make sure no one was asking a question. Okay. So as I'm going around the corner here, I'm not going to pull this tight now because I'm using these slip stitches and I don't want it to be too tight. So I pull my stitches kind of apart from one another. I don't bunch them up. Oops. There we go. I don't bunch them up. So oftentimes at the end here, you're going to get that one stitch is going to be loose, but you can just go back and pull that and you'll be fine. And let's continue here. So there are 2 rounds of each of these. So now I'm going to do another round of this. So far so good. Let's see. So you could use a color changing yarn, but then you're gonna still have to work the slip stitch pattern because this does not readily transfer back into stranded knitting. It's a little bit different because it's offset. So if you're just going to use one contrast color, you need to be a little careful at that. Okay. So here we have, so now you're starting to see how this is growing. And I always just kind of tighten this up a little bit if I need to. And so here's my master color. And when I start using my master color again, I don't tug it very hard, but I definitely, I don't leave it loose either. It's just sort of a Goldilocks kind of thing. So just gonna start again. And I'll show you this in English style in just a sec. So this is something that you can, this technique is something that you can use um, if you find a stranded pattern that you want to do and you do not like stranded knitting. You can just do these slip stitches. And honestly, I think sometimes it's really just fun to do slip stitches instead of stranded knitting anyway. It's really relaxing. Sort of, you just get into this little rhythm of slipping the stitches. I think it's a lot, it's very relaxing because you're in your slip stitch rhythm. Okay, so what's this gonna look like um, in English style? I really am not a very good English style knitter, so like I just have to keep reminding you of that. I'm terrible. So, which is so weird because I actually knit English style for many, many years. So, but I never got very fast at it. So for me, I have to work extra hard when I'm doing English style to make sure that my floats are floaty enough and they don't kind of scrunch up. So there we go. So that is what it is starting to look like in browns. Okay. So Sue said this that always confused me because technically there are still strands created, but they are just created in two passes or more. Yes. Okay. So here's why this pattern is difficult to make a stranded pattern, and that is because when it starts out, you are starting um, by slipping some stitches in a knit row here. So when you slip the stitches in that knit row, it it puts this one, I'm sorry, a knit round. It puts it one round off of how stranded knitting would be. So if I wanted to do a stranded pattern for this, it would be a little bit different. So um, hard to explain. Okay, so at the bottom, if you take a look at the bottom here, it starts out with this extra round of knitted stitches at the bottom there. And as it's being built up, those some of those stitches were actually slipped down here. So it is one round off of what stranded would look like. You can make these stranded, but it's just going to take a little bit of extra effort. So it's a little bit different from how it would be if this were written for stranded and you decided you wanted to do slip stitches instead. Um, it's just a little bit different. I hope that makes sense. Okay. However, if you want to do stranded knitting, if you want to make stranded knitting into slip stitch pattern, it's actually simpler, which I know sounds a little odd, but honest, I swear it is. And I'm looking for my stranded pattern that I had here that I was going to show you, but of course I buried it under some yarn. I mean, seriously. I think I have too much yarn. Well, no, I don't. I mean, I don't. I definitely don't have too much yarn. Um, so I'm just going to use, okay, I'm going to use the back of the pattern here. Okay, so if I wanted to do a stranded pattern, and so say I had my stranded pattern here. So, and my pattern looks like this. So here's my pattern that I'm going to do, stranded. Let's add another round here. We'll just make this into that little pattern like that. Okay, so if I'm going to do this pattern, and it's written for stranded knitting, I know exactly, Terry. There's no such thing as too much yarn. So Diana said that something about color dominance, and I am going to talk about that before we go on. Actually, you can have color dominance issues with slipping stitches. So, okay, so color dominance is when you do a pattern like this. So say you want this pattern to really pop out. You're going to work your darker color as the dominant color and your lighter color as the non-dominant color because you want that dark to pop. So when you do that, you'll be holding your dominant color to the left of your other color. And when you look at the back, the dominant color is going to be on the bottom. So if you take a look here and you see these floats right here, the red is below here. The red is acting like a dominant color below. It's coming out underneath my other slip stitches. So it's acting like it's a dominant color. If you're going to do this as slip stitches, you always have to work the stitches in the same, or the yarns in the same order. So whichever you want to be the dominant color, if I want my dark one to be my dominant color and I'm changing the stranded pattern into a slip stitch pattern, I am going to work the dominant color first and then the second color after that. So every round needs to be the same, and then the floats from this dominant color will come out underneath the others, and it will keep dominant. If you switch the order of them, it does actually look like something weird happened in the middle there. So whichever you decide to do, just keep doing that. Okay, so whereas I'd be stranding my knitting and working each round. So here's round 1, 2, and 3. I would be working across each round with my strands held in one or two hands. If I want to make this a slip stitch pattern, I'm going to work each round 2 times. So let's just call them, so if I'm doing stranded here, so it's just going to be 1 time. If I'm going to do slip stitches instead, I'm going to do 2 times. So let's just call them 1A and 1B, 2A and 2B, 3A and 3B. So each time I go across here, so the first time I want this to be dominant, the dark one. So I am going to slip this stitch right here, knit this stitch with my dominant color, and slip 3 stitches because I am repeating here. I'm going to go all the way through using my dominant color, and then I'm going to switch over to my non-dominant color, and I'm going to knit 1, slip 1, knit 2, and then repeat. So once I have done those 2 rounds, I am then finished with round 1, and I can go on to round 2. So I am going to then again start with my dominant color, knit 1, slip 1, knit 1, slip 1. When I finish, I'm going to switch to my second color, slip 1, knit 1, slip 1, knit 1, and then I'm finished with this round. So each round is just going to be worked 2 times. Okay, so just checking. Okay, okay. So my slip stitch patterns in It's a Slippery Slope are a little bit different because I'm actually doing 2 rounds with each color. So it's not how you would take a stranded pattern and make it into slip stitches. So it's just a little bit different construction. So whereas you can do this with any stranded pattern at all, um, and it works really, really well. So however many colors you have, like if I had wanted to add a third color, I could add a third color too, which would mean a third pass. So yeah, so that works with any stranded pattern. So let me make sure I've gotten everybody. Okay. Alrighty. So these are identical except for the thumb placement. And I used a Latvian construction there, where they just basically it's a just flat. There's no gusset because it's much easier to use in this type of stranded work here with the slip stitches. It's just easier without a thumb gusset, and it gives you kind of a chunky fit, which I really liked in this case. So all you're going to do is slip some stitches onto waste yarn across here and then cast on across using that same backwards loop that I showed you before. So at the end here, when you're doing the bind off, this bind off can tend to get looser. It's my stretchy bind off, and I will show you how to do that in a moment. It tends to get looser, so I have gone down a needle size up at the top and then also decreased some stitches. So don't do this bind off loose because it will be too loose. I literally have not known anybody ever be able to bind off too tight with this, but you can definitely bind off too loose, and then they look really sloppy. So let me show you my stretchy bind off. I'm just going to bind off here. Let me finish this little rib area, and then I'll show you how to bind off. So you can bind off with the stretchy bind off in any pattern, but in this particular case, I chose just to do the pearls up at the top. So it's all going to be a purled bind off. And I will show you how to do that. Okay. So the interesting thing about this, and I've actually tested this theory out, um, every time you do this bind off, it seems like you would want to purl 2 together instead of knitting two together through the back loop to bind this off, but it doesn't make any difference. It looks exactly the same. So I'm going to purl 2 stitches and then slip them back to my left needle. And I always just keep my right needle in there and knit two together through the back loop. So this is what I was talking about. If you slip these back and then purl two together, it looks the same. So I just always knit two together through the back loop because it's much less fiddly and it looks every bit as good. You literally can't tell the difference. So yeah, if you feel like this might be a little too loose for you at the top, you can also go down a needle size to help, and you should be fine. So I'm just purling one, sticking them back onto my left needle, knitting two together through the back loop. And it's super stretchy. I love this bind off. It works really well for all sorts of things. Oops. Okay. That is what it looks like. So you're basically what you're doing is decreasing out instead of actually passing the stitches over. So because of that extra yarn that you add in there, it's much stretchier than just passing a stitch over. And I love it. Okay, so I don't think that there are any little gotchas or anything like that in here. Um, Here are all the abbreviations. So once you get started doing this, the pattern makes it really obvious um, what to do. So it becomes like repetitive in a really kind of fun and relaxing and zen way. So so have fun. I mean, for this, I did 10 different colors and I just arranged them um, just in a rainbow Roy G. BV. And once I got finished with my 10 up here, I just started them over. So, and I did actually put at the bottom here the colors that I used in case somebody else wants to create the same mitt here. These are size medium, and so you're going to be able to have 12. I could have done 12 contrasting colors as well, and then had like nothing repeating, but I kind of liked the repeat. So there you go. Alrighty. So I think I have covered everything, but let me know if I did not. I have my knitting jewelry on. Let me know if I missed something that you want me to go over. And also, if you like, I can actually do a pattern, like a stranded pattern, and show you like actually how it looks as I'm knitting if I'm gonna change it over to slip stitches. If that would help, if it wasn't completely clear, I'd be happy to do that. So again, just looking at my notes here. I am not going to be doing a live next week because I will be out of town. And hopefully I'll get to see some of you. I think I get to see Terry. So let's see. Okay, just checking to make sure. Alrighty. Okay, just making sure. So Marianne asked, when will the first pattern be redone? Probably in a couple months or so. So Fiori di Sole, um, probably in a couple months. So I have a long list of stuff to do, like a big list. So hopefully all of you are going to join me on my mystery shawl this year, and that is going to start in April. So that's coming up. So I also have my Knit Stars episode. Like I was one of the original Knit Stars in season one, and so they've released my sections as a standalone, and there's a really good deal on it right now, and the link to that is in the comments. So that is my affiliate link, and I would love if you used it because that's the only way that I make any money off of the Knit Stars. It was completely an affiliate type of thing. So I really appreciate it if you use my link. And then also don't forget about knitting for food. Food is very important and very expensive. Ah! And my Knit Star sections also come with a pattern and like a little PDF that shows shawl shapes and other stuff like that. So let's see, any other questions? So Judy says, when is the next Lace Lovers pattern? So that is April. I have my stuff getting ready, and there's also there's a schedule for Lace Lovers. It is on the Ravelry page and then also on my website. So you can see the schedule. So that is subject to small changes when life gets lifey. Um, Weird, like when I have weird delays in shipments or something happens or whatever, things can happen. But I will always deliver to you my best work. So I would rather have it be a little bit late than have it not be my best work. So um, that's my promise to you. So let me see. Any other questions? Okay. Alrighty. Oh, Marianne, Knit Stars is videos. So basically what they did was they went out on location and shot video of different teachers, and we did segments. And so my segments that I designed were all about tips and tricks for lace and beading and like shawl shapes and stuff like that. So I think you would enjoy it because you really like lace. So I think they'd be right up your alley. So awesome. Alrighty. Okay. I think I think I covered everything. Every time I sign off, I'm like, oh, wait, I forgot to tell them. So, thank you so much for joining me. And I will see you the week after next. And you will hear from me in a newsletter beforehand, and I'll be around on social media, on my Ravelry group, my Facebook page, and on Instagram. And so I hope to see you around. Don't be a stranger. And I hope to see a bunch of you at the Bay Area Yarn Crawl. So take care, everybody, and I will talk to you soon. Bye bye.